So we've been discussing some inyane tainis. We've been discussing Mila on a fast day in terms of the blessing of Ori Priyagafen. We discussed the Sof Zman tainis. When does the fast really end? And today maybe we'll touch on another related topic or unrelated topic. The topic of one who must eat on a fast day, or one who is eating on a fast day. What is their role in terms of getting called up for an aliyah? In other words, we know we lein vayechal Thursday morning as well as Thursday mincha. And people are under this impression, correctly or we'll see maybe incorrectly, I'm not going to give that away yet, whether they say how many people are fasting. Well, it's a double question. Do you need a certain amount of people fasting to even lein vayechal? That's a question we're not really going into, but that's a discussion in terms of maybe it's not, that gets into a fundamental question among the Achronim in terms of is the obligation of Vayechal is, that's it, it's a day that requires a fast day, or no, it has to do with the Choves HaTzibur. You have to have X amount of people fasting in order to obligate one. So this Thursday would be less of an issue because Thursday morning we'd lein anyway. The question is what will lein. But Thursday mincha would get the real test in terms of, because there is no leining at mincha. So that so we assume that probably you need people at least for Thursday mincha. The assumption is that will be part of the equation. Whether if someone who, I guess it's twofold. Number one is, do you need a certain amount of fasters? And if not, is it enough that non-fasters to count towards the minyan? Like, are those two questions? If you assume that you can get an aliyah to someone who's not fasting, does that mean also that I don't need anyone fasting? Or even they would agree that maybe you need to get the majority in, and then maybe the rest we could throw in. Those are different issues we're not really going into. We're just assuming the question, we're laning now. That's a given. Let's assume we have enough fasters, but you have plenty of fasters to give the aliyah to. Is there anything wrong with giving it to someone who's not fasting? Is there any reason why one would have to? So what is that? So the assumption is yes. What is that? What is the basis of that assumption? It goes back to the Beis Yosef, Rabbi Yosef Cairo, who wrote the Shulchan Aruch, and before the Shulchan Aruch, the Shulchan Aruch, his major work was before the Shulchan Aruch, called the Beis Yosef. He wrote on the Torah Shulchan Aruch. The question is, if you want to know what he's really thinking, do you look into his original Beis Yosef, or do you look into his Shulchan Aruch? So he gives away the answer. We don't have to speculate. Basically, if you really want to know what he thinks, look at the Beis Yosef. Because why did he write the Shulchan Aruch? You know why he wrote the Shulchan Aruch? Either for children, for ketanim, they don't know, who can't go into all the details of the Beis Yosef, so let me give you a nice overview of the laws. Or for a Talmud Chacham who doesn't have time to go through the Beis Yosef, it's a long work, if you want to be able to review it, I don't know, if he says once a month, once a year, so then he wrote a concise one, but based on that, the Beis Yosef seems to be his primary work, and he just wrote the concise bottom line when he got to the Shulchan Aruch. So the Beis Yosef quotes from those who say that on the day of Bahab, what's Bahab? Beis, Hey, Beis. So the numerical value, Beis is 2, so that's Yom Sheni, that's Monday. Hey is Thursday. Monday, Thursday, Monday. On a Monday, Thursday, Monday, after a Yontif, there was a custom, many have no longer do it today, but there are some shuls that still do it, and among yeshivas they still do it, that after the holidays, since we were a time of simcha, we were drinking, eating, partying, perhaps we did something wrong, and therefore we want to do a little bit of tshuva, so we add some extra slichos to our davening. In fact, in the original institution was not only extra slichos, but it used to be a fast day. Even I don't know that many people who fast. When I was in yeshiva, they did, during yeshivas I were in, they had special slichos but they didn't take it so far as a fast day. And the original institution, not only was it a fast day, but you had your own special laning. You read presumably by Yichal. So even if it was Monday or Thursday, you wouldn't read Parsha Shavua. Today, if it's Monday and Thursday, people read Parsha Shavua and just say Slichas. I haven't been in a place, I'm not saying it doesn't exist, maybe there are some places who keep the original minhag of not only fasting, but reading from Vayichal. So either way, the Beis Yosef quotes from some Achronim that someone who is not fasting on Bahab cannot get an Aliyah. Someone who is not fasting on this Monday, Thursday, Monday after the holidays, so someone say based on this Beis Yosef, we see that it's a general rule that on any fast day, one cannot get an Aliyah if you're not fasting. So the question, is that true? Is there a distinction between the Bahab, the original source, versus, let's say, Yom Kippur, Tisha B'Av, Asara Teves? So let's go see. So there's an interesting Rabbi Akiva Eger. First we'll discuss Yom Kippur, then we'll move to Tisha B'Av, then we'll move to the Shar Taniyos. So there's an interesting Rabbi Akiva Eger and other Achronim, they discussed the question. We all know on Yom Kippur, as well as Shabbos, we read Kriyas HaTorah at Mincha, but something we don't do now on Mincha Shabbos, that we do on Mincha Yom Kippur, is we read from the Haftorah. And even though, let me just point out, Tosas and Megillah and Ksuvas point out, the original custom was even on Shabbos, we read from the Haftorah. That not only did we read Mincha, we took out Kriyas HaTorah, but the old custom was to read from a Haftorah as well on Shabbos Mincha. Albeit they point out, we used to read from Haftorah from Ksuvim, from the books of writings, while the Mincha we do Shabbos morning is from the Nevi'im. We'll come back to that distinction perhaps. So either way, so we know that our minhag today is we read Kriyas HaTorah Acharei Mos. We read from the end of Acharei Mos, which deals with among other things the illicit relations that one cannot have, and the Bali Musa point out, why do we read that? What's the relevance of, what's the connection of Mincha Yom Kippur? To show no matter, even on Yom Kippur, you always have to be, no matter how great you are, you always can't get too confident and too cocky, like the JET, like others, and therefore, because you end up losing, so therefore, you can never be too sure of yourself. We know you could be the great tzaddik your whole life, but you still always have to be, you have to always take the proper precaution. So we read the Mincha, then we read the Haftorah. So the question is, what about someone, Rabbi Akiva Eger raises the question, let's say one who has to eat on Yom Kippur, and by assumption he's eating not because he doesn't care about Yom Kippur, he's eating because al pi halacha he's permitted to eat. He's a chola mesukan, as we call him. He's someone who's deathly ill, meaning he's not deathly ill because he's eating, and therefore apparently he's good enough to come to shul and now even get an aliyah. A case where you're permitted to eat, could you give that person an aliyah on Mincha Yom Kippur? So Rabbi Akiva Eger raises the question, what is the issue dependent on? On why are we reading the Torah on Mincha Yom Kippur? What is the nature of Aleini? On one hand, do I say it's because Yom Kippur, the day itself, just like on Shabbos, we read at Shacharis, read at Mincha, because of the holiday of Yom Kippur, the Kedushas Yom Kippur requires us to lane morning and afternoon? Or do I say no? The reason why we're laning Mincha, everyone agrees to morning on Yom Kippur, that's because of the sanctity of the day. But Mincha Yom Kippur, maybe perhaps it's because of the tinus, that this like on Thursday we're going to read Mincha, so too Yom Kippur we're going to read Mincha. What would be a proof that it is for the tinus? What else do we do on a tinus that we don't do on Shabbos? I said what we used to do, what we don't do anymore, is we read a Haftorah. So even this Thursday we're going to be reading a Haftorah on Asara Teves. So the fact that we read a Haftorah at Mincha Yom Kippur would seem to bring a proof to the other side that we're not reading it because Kedushas Hayom, we're reading it because the Yom HaTinus. What's the difference, you'll ask? My nafkamina. What's the practical difference if today's a stat holiday or today's in lieu of a stat holiday? The banks are closed, the government buildings are closed, nafkamina metro, Fortinos, more malls are open. So what's the nafkamina if I say I lane mincha yom kippur because it's a yom hatainis or because it's a day of Kiddush Hayom? Well, one nafkamina could be, maybe we'll see the Haftorah, but even if we leave the Haftorah out of it, because originally we did read the Haftorahs on mincha yom kippur, is who could get an aliyah? If we're reading mincha yom kippur because of Kedushas Hayom, then what's the difference if you're fasting? Whether I'm eating or not doesn't take away from the Kedushas Hayom. It might affect my own observance. I'm talking about someone who's allowed to eat. So whether someone who's a cholam is sukkah, he has a mitzvah to eat on Yom Kippur. So the fact that there's a Kedushas Hayom, why should that prevent me from getting an aliyah? If I say it's the Yom HaTainis aspect of Yom Kippur, which obligates the Kriyas HaTorah, then one could make a case maybe then I can't get an aliyah. No one's fault. That's a natural consequence. If we're reading the Haftorah because we're reading Mincha Yom Kippur because it's a Yom Tainis, so only someone who's involved in the Yom Tainis can get an aliyah. So that's the Rabbi Akiva Eges Chakira. Is Mincha Yom Kippur because of Kedushas Hayom, then yes, even someone eating can get an aliyah. Or if it's Midin Tainis, no. So what another Rav Selevan, the Marcheshes added another nafkamina. I mean, along this, whether it's Kedushas Hayom or Yom Tainis, is how many brachas do we read on the Haftorah? So let me go back a step. So what do we do on Shabbos? What do we do? We have the classical bracha before, and then we make how many blessings after? I think was it 4, 5? Yeah, 5, because 5, or even, because we usually like to have 7, aliyahs 4 or 5, Alan saying 5, I don't have to count them up, but we'll go with Al. If he's wrong, it's Al's fault, and if he's right, he gets credit. It's both ways.
I'm right, it's my fault anyway.
Or we'll just have to blame Bruce for not coming. He knows to give us the opposite answer, but we don't have those people today. So whatever the amount is, we finish off Mekadesh HaShabbos. So we know we do more. So on a Yom Tainis, we finish off Magin David. On Thursday, everyone agrees Magin David. And on Shabbos, everyone agrees Makadesh or Shabbos, or on Yom Tov, Makadesh Yisrael V'Azmanim. And everyone agrees on Yom Kippur morning, it's Makadesh Yisrael V'Azmanim. All the brachas. What about Mincha Yom Kippur? Where do you end? So that's a fundamental machlokas, Sfardim and Ashkenaz. In Ohev Tzedek, that is the correct answer, maybe even here, which they found it's only Nusach Svar, maybe they also do it that way. But the Minhag Ashkenaz is to end Magin David, and the Minhag Svar, again, within Svarim you have different, but the truly Minhag Svar, the Machaber brings down, is you end off Makadesh Yisrael V'Hazmanim. So what's this issue? What's in the Kudas HaMachokis? What's the issue? Whether I finish off Magin David, or I finish off Makadesh Yisrael V'Yom HaKippurim, or whatever the exact text would be. It would be this issue, the Marcheshes points out. If I'm reading the Kriyas HaTorah on Yom Kippur is because of, and hence the Haftorah as well, because of Kedushas Hayom. So if it's Kedushas Hayom, why is it any different than the morning? But if I'm reading it out the Yom HaTainis, so if it's the Yom HaTainis, you don't need Makadesh Yom HaKippurim, you end up with Magin David. That's a fundamental machlokas today. Minhag Ashkenaz is to go with Magin David. And Rav Soloveitchik pointed out another nafkamina. The question is, we know we have a traditional way of laning or saying the brachas, all Baruch Hu Es Hashem, Baruch Hu Es Hashem. We know on the Yom HaNoram we have a special nusach. Baruch Hu Es Hashem HaMivorach. We have the Yom HaNoram nusach. So the kasha always comes up is, what do I do? It's more of a kasha for David because he's a Kohen. By the time I come along, it's already decided. Perhaps it's not. It's necessarily decided. I'll give you a Ma'aseh Shahaya in a minute. But the Kohen's getting up. If he's the first one, so where does he go with? Does he go with the Yom and Noram? I always go with the normal one because I don't have a good voice. I don't like doing that one, even during good times. Any chance of the normal nusach, I'll grab it. But the question is, so what is it dependent on? So if you go with this lumdis, Rav Soloveitchik said, If you assume we're reading the Kriyas HaTorah because it's a Kedushas Hayom Yom HaKippurim, then you go with the one I don't like, with the Yom Noram Nusach. But if you assume you're reading it out Yom HaTainis, so then you go with the classical Nusach, the Baruch Hu you make, and hence not only the guy, but it affects the person laning. I'm just saying the Kohen, he goes before the guy laning. So obviously you could speak to the Baal Koreh and see which nusach he's using. However,
I don't understand that, because on a Thursday between Yom Kippur and between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur,
right,
you're always using the Yom Noram, aren't you?
You are during the week? No, you're not.
Oh,
you're not. You're using normal.
Oh, because you do change the. You don't change it at all.
No, only on Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur we use it.
Yom Kippur is what the only 3 days.
On Shabbos we use the regular one, and even certainly during the week.
Right.
In fact, it's a discussion on Shabbos, Yom Kippur, in terms of the Musaf, in terms of what niggin the Bali Musaf sings, in terms of you go with the Shabbos niggin or Yom Kippur. That's a separate discussion. We have to speak to Cantor Beer from the Cantor School of Yeshiva University to help us out with which niggin to use. But that's a separate issue.
Okay.
We don't have to worry about it for a while. So getting back here, so that's the issue here. So in fact, so that's what it would appear. If you're reading it for out Kedushas Hayom, then you should make the Baal Koreh should lane with that nusach, and the one getting called up for an aliyah. And if you're reading it with the everyday Yom HaTainis one, then however clearly Rav David Lipschitz, he was one of the Rosh Yeshiva in YU. He lived across the street, across the hall from me for many years. And my wife took advantage by bringing in one of my daughters and getting brachas all the time. Whether that's connected to the way she turned out or not, we could discuss. But, so the point is that, so he obviously didn't feel this way. Why do I say that? Did I discuss it with him? No. He demonstrated it. Because Mincha Yom Kippur at YU, when I was living by, I used to daven there, Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, very nice davening. And I got called up for Levi on Mincha Yom Kippur, so it was already decided for me. They're reading the classical nusach of the Yom HaTainis. And so I forgot who got Cohen. I'm not sure if it was Shimon Kerner or not, another friend of mine, but someone got Cohen, and he read the normal. Then I was a nice relief for me, because it made the easy bracha for me. And then, but the Chafetz Chaim felt very strongly about it. He used to think about it and go back and make that. And, many people don't make that. They just go ahead with the regular bracha. And everyone was waiting. Rav David Lipschitz got Shlishi, and hence probably Maftir Yonah. And he went back and he did the Yom and Noram Nusach. I never asked him why he did it. So easy. Number one is he doesn't hold from the Shtickle Torah. Maybe it's something to do with that. Or either he felt that, he holds from the Shtickle Torah, but he felt they were wrong. They should have laid the Yom and Noram. Either way is, I guess, each person on their own, because Rav David did not go, because he said, well, my meaning is differently, but it was interesting that I knew the Shtickle Torah, and Rav David went, he went with the different Nusach. So either way, so maybe he didn't like this, he didn't connect it, he didn't go with the Rav's shtickle about it. You also tie this, but it seems, how Pisfar, it seems to fit in, that this issue, whether we're reading Mincha Yom Kippur, and hence the Haftorah because of Yom HaTainis, Yom Kippur would depend on these issues. Can someone who is eating get an aliyah? Do you end off the brachas of the Haftorah, Magin David, do you do the whole 9 yards? Or thirdly, is what nusach do you read? Do you do with the Yom and Noram nusach or not? So that's the Rabbi Akiva Eiger seems to conclude it's working midin kedushas Yom HaKippurim. And why did I say that? Because he concludes even someone who is eating can get an aliyah on Mincha Yom Kippur. So he clearly is assuming that the aligning we have even on Mincha Yom Kippur is midin kedushas hayom. And even if you're eating, even if you have to eat, because al pi halacha you're a chol mesukin, you can get an aliyah. The Chasam Sofer did not go with the Rabbi Akiva Eiger. He's chole. Well, actually, no. Actually, Rabbi Akiva Chasam Sofer not only goes with Rabbi Akiva Eiger, he takes it a step further. The Chasam Sofer, it was a Maaseh Shahaya. They were mishpacha, by the way, as well. He got sick on Tisha B'av. So I think the case was Mincha Tisha B'av, and he was a chole, and they called him up for an aliyah, or that was the case. I think they actually called him up and they wanted to know, can you get in it? So I think he writes the Tuvah saying, I think yes, but I'm biased, I'm Nogea B'Dav, I want the aliyah. You could ask the base in the Pressburg. But he wrote a Tuvah saying why he thinks it's not, or maybe he got the aliyah and he said to write a Tuvah anyway, but he came out, the Chasam Sofer says, I say yes, that someone who is eating on Tisha B'Av can even get, that's a bigger chiddush, because Tisha B'Av is certainly, it's harder to say, there is no Kedushas Hayom of Tisha B'Av, like you could say by Yom Kippur. I mean, maybe you could argue it's a day that's obligated in Kriyas HaTorah. Maybe you could argue it's the Yom HaTainus is being Mechayev you, just like all the other fast days, but it's harder to say there is no Kedushas Hayom here. So the Chasam Sofer says, I think, yes, number one, he quotes the issue with Rabbi Akiva Eiger, and clearly Rabbi Akiva Eiger seems to limit it to Yom Kippur, but he would not say it by Tisha B'Av. Chasam Sofer takes it a step further. He says that I think you can, because he thinks the day itself obligates you in reading, even Mincha Tisha B'Av. And then he says, I know what the Beis Yosef says about Bahab, that someone who can't get an aliyah, someone who eats on a fast day can't get an aliyah, but that's Bahab. That's different than Tisha B'Av, because Bahab, what do you have? What do you have to show for yourself? Nothing. If you're not fasting, but today we do a token slichas, but bottom line is, if you don't fast, you don't have Bahab. So he says that, the Beis Yosef says it by Bahab. But then it's true, if you're not fasting, it's nothing, it's a regular Monday or Thursday, and therefore if you're eating, you can't be part of Bahab. But Tisha B'Av, there are many other things besides not eating. We have the 5 prohibitions, just like we do on Yom Kippur. You still can't wear leather shoes, you can't anoint yourself. The fact someone who eats on Tisha B'Av doesn't mean he can take a shower or wear leather shoes. You still consider the bar chiyuva, you still consider someone who is obligated in the day. And that's why I say even on Mincha Tisha B'Av, the Chasam Sofer says you could even get an. So Rabbi Akiva Eiger said a chiddush by Mincha Yom Kippur. The Chasam Sofer took it a step further to Mincha Tisha B'Av. So that'd be the Shaila, Asara Teves, Yud Zayin Tammuz, and Som Gedaya, which you don't have much to show for yourself. So during the days when it was Midivrei Kabbalah, according to the Ramban, and maybe originally they started off Midivrei Kabbalah had the same dinam as Tisha B'Av, we could argue the case. Today, maybe perhaps it's similar to Bahab, that if you're not fasting, what else do you have to show? What else are we doing differently besides not fasting, besides not eating and drinking, and therefore it would be harder. So I think the minhag ha'olam is that even on Yom Kippur and Tisha B'Av, that many places have a minhag not to give to someone who's eating, because if someone who's fasting, why get involved in the shayla? Perhaps maybe they wouldn't say it on Tisha. Maybe the question would be, let's say there's no one fasting or not enough. Then the true test will come whether they'll give someone aliyah. It's a shayla on a yom. It's a discussion. Let's say you don't have 10 on this Thursday. Would you read from Vayechal, or maybe perhaps you wouldn't. That would depend on maybe whether the day itself requires you to lane. Then today, this Thursday, it might be a little more lenient because it's a Monday and Thursday, and we'd be laning anyway. So the minhag seems to be that someone who eats on the other fast days, we don't give an aliyah to, at least not lechatchila. And even on Tisha B'Av Yom Kippur, the minhag seems not that way, but at least there's more to rely on. That on those days you have Rabbi Akiva Eiger to rely on, you have the Chasam Sofer. By these fast days, it seems to be more similar to Bahab than in the cases where we can't, where one who is eating, and that's all you have left to show for it. So perhaps then the minhag is that we try to find, definitely give it to someone who is laning, and then the question is, how many fasters do you need? Maybe if you have 6 or 7, you have the majority fasters, so that's enough to read Parshas Vayechal, even though, and just don't give those people an aliyah. What happens if that person's a Kohen? The Kohen and the Levi, those are the people who are eating, so then depends on, it would be an interesting shayla. I'm just thinking aloud, what would you do? because it depends what the minig is in general. That's a shy. Let's say you have a kohen in shul, and nothing to do with him, but you have a simcha, or you want to give other people an aliyah. Is it an appropriate custom to send a kohen out of the room? So some say it's never an appropriate custom. There's a mitzvah min Torah of the kidashto. There's a biblical mitzvah to give kavod to the kohen. And one of the ways we do is by giving the kohen the first aliyah. So they hold it. So if you hold it's always inappropriate, then in this case, should be no. Here the question is, you have to work with the assumption that the kohen can get the aliyah. If the kohen can't get an aliyah, then you could argue it's not a case of being a mavaza the kohen. Is the kohen, then the question maybe you are that he's not fasting. So maybe you get into that issue. But if you assume that many shuls do, at least during the week, Rav Moshe talks about it. There could be a different on Shabbos and during the week when there are a lot of people versus a little people. So then, if you're going to send the kohen out for non-factors as this, and then perhaps in this case, then if you're going to send the kohen out because you want to give other people an aliyah because they have a yard site, then certainly in a case where he's not fasting, that would be more justified.